he read what was in the deal, Trump said, yeah, no, this is not going to happen. This was also, now that Trump said this is not happening, there is no China deal. Obviously, there never was a China deal. China deal? What are you talking? China deal? Nope, not ringing a bell. Sorry, it says Carney and LeBlanc and everybody else. There was no China deal after all. And so we were silly to think there was a deal in the first place. That would be wrong. And obviously, Mark Carney wouldn't do something like that. So the whole China deal didn't happen. It was a fever dream in January. Sorry about your luck. So it's very, very strange that they're taking this position, but I'll show you all of the tweets. I could not see it. The gun buyback and seizure is falling apart already. It's going to fail. It's not going to happen because fundamentally the provinces aren't going to cooperate with the federal government, and the federal government has no apparatus with which to collect these weapons other than maybe the RCMP, but it's not going to work out. I don't think it's going to work out. So it's going to be very interesting. We'll see with all of that. A lady was killed using MAID, and she apparently was saying to the MAID person hours before she was killed using MAID that she didn't want to do MAID and she wanted to go to a hospice and live, and they killed her anyway. And this is a case that's being reviewed, so we're going to talk about that later. And of course, Trump chooses the weekend that I'm off. Well, off. I'm working still, but whatever. Not doing my show to come up with the discombobulator. Are you kidding me? And to come out and crush the China deal. I knew that was coming. I knew it was coming, but here we are, and I missed a couple of days, so it's time to play catch up. I know I couldn't do my kitchen table talk or anything like that, but I like doing my show, so I'm going to do my show today. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we got to talk about Trump. Now, and the only reason I'm really starting with Trump is because of the name of the show today is Set Discombobulators to Discombobulate, because I like saying that word. And I'm worried that if I start with China, then I'm not going to get through China, and I'm going to have to do a lot longer. Whereas this way, you'll get the feeling of China, and I'll cut it off whenever I have to cut it off. So, as I said, lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Polymarket says, breaking: Trump reveals the United States has a secret weapon called the Discombobulator, which was used to render Russian and Chinese rockets useless during Maduro's capture. Now, I kept bringing up this clip, this Fox News clip, and it has been cut from the internet. The part, I think, or maybe I'm just deaf to it. You know when you're looking for something and it's right in front of you and you just can't see it? Maybe I'm listening for something and I just can't hear it, but I have no idea. Fundamentally, this clip doesn't talk about a discombobulator. I wanted to have Trump saying discombobulator, but that's... It doesn't exist. But apparently he did say that on a video clip, and he said, I'm not allowed to talk about it. And so that part of the clip is gone. Red Panda says, President Trump says the advanced tech weapon used in the Maduro raid is a discombobulator. But he doesn't actually say that on this clip, or I didn't hear it. So sorry about that. This is a lady, and this is Susan Kokinda, and she does a show, and I'm sure she's much more popular than my show. But her show is talking about what Trump's doing, what he's actually doing. And I think they do a really good job at focusing in on that. And so this is a minute long, and I find it interesting enough to share. So here we go.
And Donald Trump is in now with far more power than he had in his first administration, because he knows what he's up against. And I think the American population has gotten a lot smarter, and he's going for it. He is breaking this rules-based order. This is a complete rupture. And what Trump is saying is, we want a world of sovereign nations. We don't want a world in which we have to submit to your financial rules, your green agenda, your decision of who's the enemy in the world, and we have to go fight them. We're going to have a world of sovereign nations. And we may not align, in terms of all policies with another nation, but we can work with them on the basis of what's best for us and what's best for that nation. And that is a complete rupture from the rules-based order. By the way, just before I got on, I saw that President Trump rescinded his invitation to Prime Minister Carney to join the Board of Peace. So Trump understood what Carney was saying. Carney understood what Carney was saying.
And this is fallout from Carney's speech at the WEF. And then Trump came into Davos and said, here's what I did. And here's what worked great for our economy. We're the hottest country in the world. Nothing hotter, right? And fundamentally, he's right. If he is bringing in a lot of money with the tariffs, the companies are paying the money and they're maintaining, the companies are still making money, right? They're able to continue their operations with this configuration. And that seems okay. Places like Jaguar. I mean, the problem with Jaguar is that it's too woke, but there are fundamental other things in play. The tariffs aren't breaking these companies. They're not failing. Trump is making a lot of money, and he's talking about removing income taxes and things like that. And so I think that it's interesting to highlight, all of the most popular people, all the actors, Bryan Cranston and the Hulk and all these people are all saying Trump's terrible. And really, I think the moves he's making seem to be benefiting his people. I wish we had people who were looking out for Canadians in Canada, right? Because it seems like Trump is actually looking out for Americans. It's just a question on who's at the top of the ladder, Israel or America. I'm not sure. I genuinely don't know. The Gateway Pundit says Trump is considering a naval blockade of Cuba with a plan for regime change by year end. So mark your calendars, Christmas 2026. Cuba becomes a part of the United States. Yay. Tarkin says Starmer's Chagos deal didn't collapse because of the new facts or parliamentary scrutiny. It collapsed because the U.S. finally looked at it and said no. The moment Washington raised the 1966 UK-US treaty, the whole thing fell apart. A deal sold as urgent, lawful, and vital to security couldn't survive contact with reality. No binding court order, no security deadline, no threat to Diego Garcia, just political urgency dressed up as inevitability. Keir Starmer, our treacherous, treasonous prime minister, ignored a live defense treaty, relied on a non-binding ICJ opinion, misled Parliament with $3.4 billion figure, while officials warned the real cost would exceed $35 billion. This wasn't diplomacy. It was a reckless surrender by assumption. Assume the United States complies, assume Parliament obeys, assume sovereignty is expendable. The bluff was called, the bill disappeared. A prime minister who said there was no choice just found out he had no authority. The moment Washington raised the 1966 treaty, the whole structure gave way. So I find that interesting. This whole Chagos thing was a big deal. It was a military base. The Brits were saying, we infringed, we're going to rent it from you. And they had this whole structure. They were getting a lot of pushback. Lots of people were saying this is terrible. And it fell apart because they had a deal signed with the United States, and they can't just ignore that. They can't just shelve that, but they were trying to. And Biden would have let them get away with it, but Trump isn't. And so my question is, what happens after Trump? I don't know. Inevitable West says, J.D. Vance says, they think we hate Europe. We don't. We love Europe. We want Europe to continue to control its borders because we love European civilization and we want it to preserve itself. The silent majority of Europeans agree. Why silent? Why are people afraid to say self-preservation is something that's important? Our culture is a special, snowflake, and we should preserve it as long as we're able, because eventually things change, probably, right? I don't know. But it's one of those things where I don't know why that's verboten, you're not allowed to talk about that. Eric says the United States withdraws from the World Health Organization today, 1 year after President Trump's historic executive order from the Oval Office. After 77 years, the United States is no longer a WHO member. Let's go. Good riddance. Thank you, President Trump. So he signed them out of the World Health Organization, as far as I understand it. So that's interesting. Mark Nixon says, breaking, Donald Trump warns Canada of a new relationship with China. It's all starting to unravel. Trump says Canada is against the Golden Dome being built over Greenland, even though the Golden Dome would protect Canada. Instead, they voted in favor of doing business with China, who will eat them up within the first year. One of the things, okay, so we're going to talk about China now. One of the things I want to point out is I am against the Golden Dome. I do not see, now, a potential caveat to that is that if the Golden Dome is going to stop the geoengineering planes from flying over our skies, then I could get on board with the Golden Dome. If the Golden Dome is going to protect against that, then okay, I could get on board with that. But when I look at threats to Canada, I can't remember one intercontinental ballistic missile. I can't remember one even just regular missile from, Toronto to Guelph, or from Winnipeg to Mississauga. There's not been one. Is there a missile that I've missed? Do we have missiles flying all over the place that we need to protect ourselves from? No, we're not in Israel bordering Arab states as a Jewish homeland. No? Oh, weird. So what do we need the Golden Dome for? Can you explain that? Because it seems like you're railroading us into this purchase, and it seems like a bit monorail-ish, right? Like monorail, no thanks. I don't need the Golden Dome. When is there a missile that's been threatening Canada. Like, we need air defense all of a sudden. I don't know. And maybe I'm naive. Maybe we do need air defense. Maybe this thing has just been waiting in the wings. But like, also maybe the superheroes caused the supervillains, right? Like, if you have air defenses, maybe people will start lobbing something at us, right? And also maybe the spoiler alert, the Village, they use this as a bad guy to keep us in line. Oh no, we got another bunch of missiles coming in. Hope the Golden Dome holds. So yeah, I'm not convinced on the Golden Dome. Seems really expensive. Seems like we're being railroaded into it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't think it's a good idea. And I haven't been convinced by Trump's rhetoric on it. It's just like the vaccine the first time around. No thanks. I think I'll skip it very much. And so Golden Dome, no Golden Dome, I don't really care. Economically, Canada's a complete disaster. We're run by communists. We don't have sovereignty. Like, so the Golden Dome seems like it's not going to deal with that. Like, Canadian officials, just like in Minnesota and all the other fraudulent states, California, all the other blue states, Canadian officials are flying in. Sorry, it's cold in my studio, so I've got the heater on. Canadian officials are using tax dollars to fly in nationals and then using tax dollars to pay off NGOs that funnel the money to the nationals. The Golden Dome's not going to do a damn thing about that. They're not going to do anything about that. The Golden Dome's not going to touch that. So, like, what? Can we just, like, deport some people? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any... Golden Dome? You're not helping, man. Like, what? So, okay. China. Moving on. Let's talk about China. Wall Street Mav says, Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Trump said to Mark Carney during his WEF speech, you better watch your words there, Mark. Canada survives because we allow it, basically. Like, we could have Canada and, like, ingest it for breakfast. Like, no problem, Mark Carney. So this is Mark Carney, and he had a whole speech, but I don't care about the speech because it's all just Marxist nonsense. But in the speech, Carney says, Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Yes, it does. Canada thrives because we're Canadian. What does that even mean, Mark Carney? Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney have been a disaster for Canada since 2015. I agree with Wall Street Mav. And here's the real GDP per capita. And Canada and the United States used to be closely aligned. Our real GDP was tied very, very closely. Our lines have diverged, so they go in different directions. Canada is on a lower track. The United States is on a very, very a trajectory that we could have easily continued, but we chose not to. And we implemented carbon taxes because we were told that degrowth is important or something like that while we import our replacements. Weird, right? Super weird. So the whole China thing is blowing up in Mark Carney's face. Here is... Dear Prime Minister Carney, please let this letter serve to represent that the Board of Peace is withdrawing its invitation to you regarding Canada's joining what will be the most prestigious board of leaders ever assembled at any time. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So you were invited, and now you're uninvited. Uninvited Carney. And that's not good for Canada because, geographically, he didn't invite any other governors to the Board of Peace, as far as I know. Was DeSantis invited? Table Salt says, breaking 2026 U.S. National Defense Strategy released late on Friday night specifically mentions Canada and seems to suggest that if Canada doesn't do its part for national defense, that they could subject actions, or Canada could be, subject to actions up to the Maduro treatment. Read it for yourself. So here it is. It says, defending the U.S. homeland. And it's highlighted at the end here, but I think I'll read all of it because it's important. We will secure America's borders and maritime approaches, and we will defend our nation's skies through the Golden Dome for America and a renewed focus on countering unmanned aerial threats. We will maintain a robust and modern nuclear deterrent capable of addressing the strategic threats to our country, raise and sustain formidable cyber defenses, and hunt and neutralize Islamic terrorists who have the ability and intent to strike our homeland. At the same time, we will actively and fearlessly defend America's interests throughout the Western Hemisphere. We will guarantee U.S. military and commercial access to key terrain, especially the Panama Canal, Gulf of America, and Greenland. We will provide President Trump with credible military options to use against narco-terrorists, whatever they may be. We will engage in good faith with our neighbors, from Canada to our partners in Central and South America, but we will ensure that they respect and do their part to defend our shared interests. And where they do not, we will stand ready to take focused, decisive action that concretely advances U.S. interests. This is the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, and America's military stands ready to enforce it with speed, power, and precision, as the world saw in Operation Absolute Resolve. So, holy smoke. That's just one aspect. So you saw what happened to Maduro, right, Mark? Right? So that's a little weird, right? And I mean, like, not that weird, but like, hey, you better not F around because you might just find out, buddy. Table Salt says, breaking, after updating the U.S. national defense strategy late last night to specifically mention Canada that is subject to decisive action, Trump is now loading up a trade salvo against Canada. I told all of you this would happen. Yeah, I've been saying this for a while. Carney wants this to happen. Apparently, people think that Carney wants this to happen because he's going to use this as a fulcrum to base his reelection or to base a reelection campaign on. And so, plausible, but I also think the guy who sold Canada out to China instead of making a deal that he basically got elected promising that he'd make doesn't get a majority if he calls a snap election now. You don't do that. You don't break all those promises, lie all the time, and then go into a snap election and, oh, bingo, bango, bongo, you've got a majority. It just doesn't work like that. I mean, in our rigged election system, they could probably magic that up. And I'm not saying it's outside of the possible because our elections are rigged. But in a real situation where real people have to react to things and politicians have to prove something to their constituents, that doesn't happen. And so anybody who's making that argument is being fed that line, in my opinion. And I don't think it's viable. I think it would be risky. It would be risky to do it. I don't think they'd get away with it. But here I am. They got 4 years of Biden, so I could be wrong. Donald Trump says if Governor Carney thinks that he's going to make Canada a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States, he is sorely mistaken. China will eat Canada alive, completely devour it, including the destruction of their businesses, their social fabric, and general way of life. If Canada makes a deal with China, it will immediately be hit with 100% tariffs against all Canadian goods and products coming into the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter. 100%. Done. You're done. Shut it down. The White House says the last thing the world needs is to have, actually, they're just sharing Trump's post on Truth Social, and they're reposting it on Twitter or X. And they say the last thing the world needs is to have China take over Canada. It is not going to happen or even come close to happening. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Trump. So China, get your hands off Canada. They're mine, says Trump. So did you see what I did to Greenland? How about Maduro? Did you see that? Dominic LeBlanc says, statement by the Honorable Dominic LeBlanc, President of the King's Privy Council, blah, 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 blah. As the Prime Minister stated this week, Canada and the United States have established a remarkable partnership in the areas of the economy and security, and we will continue to ensure that the future of this relationship benefits workers and businesses on both sides of the border. There is no pursuit of a free trade agreement with China. What has been achieved is a resolution on several important tariff issues. The new government of Canada is strengthening the Canadian economy through a plan that consolidates our national strength and bolsters our trade partnerships around the world. And here is Mark Nixon. He says Dominic LeBlanc claims Canada did not enter a free trade agreement with China. What is this statement from the Prime Minister's office then? So, central to this, quote, new partnership is an agreement to collaborate in energy, clean technology, and climate competitiveness. Canada and China are both energy superpowers focused on expanding two-way energy cooperation, reducing emissions, and scaling up investment in batteries, solar, wind, and energy storage. Batteries are not energy storage. While in Beijing, the Prime Minister met business leaders in energy and clean technology to identify and accelerate Chinese investment opportunities in Canada. This is not a trade agreement. This is just two countries out for a drink, very casual, right? I don't know why you're upset, Donald. And so it seems what's going on with this. And it's not just these collaborations and energy superpoweredness, everybody's eating from the same wings thing, it's that Canada's saying we're going to have a security thing. Here's Shove Majumder, and he's a Conservative MP. He says security cooperation with Beijing on transnational crime, cybercrime, narcotics trafficking, synthetic drugs, and money laundering. The CCP is the world's largest source of fentanyl precursors pushed through criminal cartels that have devastated communities and taken more Canadian lives since World War II. They launder billions through our casinos, ports, and real estate. They turn Vancouver into a triad playground. Their cyber spies hack our systems. Their illegal police stations intimidate Canadians. Their united front strategy interferes in our elections. They've backed brutal regimes in Caracas, Tehran, and the Kremlin. Last I checked, they haven't dismantled their ambition to forge a new world order. Carney. You don't fight crime by partnering with those that fuel it. You haven't even established the foreign agent registry. None of this is cooperation. It's capitulation to China. And so this is Carney talking about the security agreement. I think it's him talking about the security agreement. But I wanted to highlight fundamentally the security cooperation with Beijing. This is out of step with NATO. This is out of step with G7, United Nations, all of these things. We're making independent security deals with China now? And Trump's going to be fine with this? Okay, give your head a shake, for crying out loud. I don't really want to listen to Carney, so we're going to keep moving. Here is No Limit. Round 2 of the tariff war begins. Trump just threatened to cut Canada off from the world's biggest market. A 100% tariff isn't a negotiation tactic. It's an execution order for the economy. Here's the reason behind it and what's likely coming next week. Okay, I also have to say goodbye to the stream in a minute, so we'll do this one and then I've got to say goodbye to the stream. But there's lots more show, and I was right about the China thing. The fraud stuff is wild. The grab bag of governance is pretty good as well. Anyway, we'll carry on. It's an execution order for the economy. Here's the reason behind it, what's likely coming next week. Trump thinks Canada is being used as a middleman. He's betting that China is going to ship parts to Ontario, slap a Made in Canada sticker on them, and sneak them into the United States duty-free. The 100% tariff is his way of slamming the door before they even get to the porch. And this got personal this week. Carney went to Switzerland and basically called Trump a dictator. Trump fired back by saying Canada only exists because we let them. Now he's tying their entire economy to two things: cancel the China deal immediately, hand over total control of the Greenland defense project. He's not looking for a win-win. He's looking for a surrender. Canada has no backup plan. 75% of what they make comes from the United States. If this tariff hits, the Canadian dollar turns into monopoly money, and their businesses are effed by next weekend. Carney has to choose: keep his pride and his deal with Beijing, or keep his country from going bankrupt. He's going to, in my opinion, he's not going to act, but I could be wrong. The next few days are going to be ugly. I'll keep you posted on everything. By the way, I called every market top and bottom on the last decade, blah, 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 blah. And this is the Governor Carney Truth Social, so that's interesting. Global Eye says, breaking. President Trump says the United States will impose a 100% tariff on all Canadian goods if Canada makes a deal with China. So those cars coming in? Not anymore. And here is...
Oh, good morning. This
is Ivano, and I think he's the Italian Canadian. No, this guy is one of the union bosses for the automakers, as far as I understand it. And he's explaining that this is a very, very bad plan. This China deal, very bad idea.
Oh, good morning. My name is Brian Kingston. I'm the president and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association.
There you go. Sorry, I got it wrong, but he told you who he was.
Canada's auto industry is under enormous pressure, with over 90% of Canadian production destined for the United States. There is no industry without U.S. access and North American integration. Diversification is not an option for automotive, as markets in Europe and Asia are better served by assembly plants in those regions. Canada's market alone is too small to justify large-scale manufacturing. The future of Canada's auto industry and the hundreds of thousands of jobs that it supports depends on securing our trade relationship with the United States. The federal government's decision to open the Canadian market to Chinese EVs is deeply concerning. The Canada-China strategic partnership has the potential to undermine Canada's auto sector and presents risks to the future of our integrated North American automotive supply chain. As the Premier has outlined, it is critical that the federal government rectifies this situation by taking immediate action to bolster the competitiveness of the very companies that have been building cars and employing Canadians for over 100 years. Step one is repealing the costly and redundant EV sales mandate.
And he goes through the other things that he needs the government to do, but there are a whole bunch of things that the government needs to do to fix things, and most of it is undo their bad policies. With that, I've got to say goodbye to the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want the whole show, head over to